Coming up on our newscast, President Park Geun-hye talks labor reforms over lunch as she hosts representatives from the labor force, management, and government at Cheong Wa Dae. The foreign ministers of South Korea, the U.S., and Japan will meet to assess the current situation on the peninsula, discuss North Korea issues, and Japan's new security agreement. Chinese President Xi Jinping kicks off his U.S. visit with a gathering between his business delegates and American business leaders, possibly to soothe tensions before he meets President Barack Obama on Friday. All next on Primetime News. Hello, welcome to Primetime News on this Tuesday, September 22nd. I'm Daniel Choy.
And I'm Hwang Ji-hye. Thank you for joining us.
President Park Geun-hye invited labor, management, and government representatives to her office today.
And there she expressed gratitude for reaching a landmark deal earlier this month and pledged thorough talks with the labor and corporate sectors in implementing the agreement. Our Lee Soo-eun reports.
President Park Geun-hye invited leaders representing labor, management, and government to the presidential office of Cheong Wa Dae Tuesday to discuss labor reforms over lunch. The event was the first of its kind since February. Hosting the heads of the Korea Tripartite Commission, the Federation of Korea Trade Unions, the Korea Employers Federation, and top officials like Labor Minister Lee Ki-kwon, President Park promised to remain open to further discussion while reforms are pushed forward. The promise follows the Tripartite Commission's landmark agreement on labor market reforms earlier this month. President Park gave special thanks to the labor union for sharing the burden and difficulties that come with reform.
노사정위원회에서 보여준 그런 어떤 양보, 타협의 정신을 계속 살려나간다면 한국형 노동개혁의 어떤 좋은 모델을 만들 수 있겠다 이렇게 생각이 됩니다.
Though the agreement on reforms still needs approval from Parliament, President Park highlighted that it will give hope to generations of families in Korea, as it is key to relieving youth unemployment. Lee Soo-eun, Arirang News.
Korea's rival parties continue to wrangle over reforms to the labor market. The ruling Saenuri Party has vowed to make headway, but they're facing a block from the opposition, which says the government's reform drive is flawed. Ji Myung-gil has more.
The ruling Saenuri Party vowed to push ahead with a set of proposals to reform the country's labor market, which is President Park Geun-hye's stated priority for the second half of the year.
Labour reform is a must in order to revive the economy and create jobs for young people. Our party, the government and the presidential office will cooperate on administrative procedures to revise employment rules and contracts. We hope to make the process more transparent by getting help from experts.
The ruling bloc last week submitted proposed revisions to 5 labor laws that aim to ease the requirements for laying off underperforming workers, establish a wage peak system that gradually cuts senior workers' wages, extend the employment period of temporary workers from 2 years to 4, and expand the coverage for accidents that happen during a worker's commute. The main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy has major objections to the proposed reforms, which the party says will only hinder efforts to create stable jobs.
Making it easier to dismiss underperforming workers, cutting wages, expanding the employment period of temporary workers, these are the labor reforms President Park Geun-hye and the ruling party are focusing on. The 5 bills the Saenuri Party submitted on restructuring the labor market are flawed.
The opposition bloc also reiterated that it is against any move by the ruling party, which has a majority in parliament, to unilaterally enact the labor reform bills. The MPAD is calling for a separate parliamentary committee to handle labor reform policy and generate more discussion among various interest groups. The Saenuri Party, however, contends there has been enough discussion and is urging the MPAD to pass the bills. Ji Myung-gil, Arirang News.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is revamping Pyongyang's weapons development program. The latest is this. He is replacing older officials, some in very prominent positions, with much younger ones. Song Ji-san brings us this report.
At a time when North Korea appears to be developing more high-tech missiles and nuclear weapons, it seems like its leader Kim Jong-un is replacing more older officials with officials who are younger by at least a decade or more. The North State Korean Central News Agency reported Tuesday on the officials who accompanied the young leader during a recent visit to a munitions factory. That list includes Kim Chun-seop, and his name appeared after those of Workers' Party secretaries Cheong-hye and Kim Yang-gon. The location of his name is an indication of his growing power. Although the report did not state the new official's position, there is speculation that he's the Deputy Minister of Machinery, widely believed to be a euphemism for weapons development. Kim was promoted to North National Defense Commission earlier this year and has seen his career take off since Kim Jong-un took power in 2011. Before that, he was a regional official in charge of a military weapons factory complex. He is believed to be in his late 50s, whereas his predecessor was in his 70s. And he's just one of the many new key aides who have replaced older officials in recent months. Experts say the shift in the weaponry sector to a younger group of officials will continue to meet Kim Jong-un's goal of expediting and reinforcing long-range missile and nuclear weapons development. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
North Korea's human rights record was the focal point again at a panel discussion hosted by the UN Human Rights Council. Participants said the international community should work together to address the dire situation and hold accountable those responsible for human rights abuses. For more on this story, we turn to our Sun Jung-in.
At a panel discussion in Geneva on Monday, the UN Commission of Inquiry said it had regularly reported and adopted resolutions against North Korea for its crimes against humanity, but has yet to see any progress on the issue. The Commission's chairman said it was the obligation of the international community to investigate matters properly to help improve the country's dire human rights situation.
Crimes against humanity have been found, and it is not open to the world community to turn away. It is the duty of the world community.
Marzuki Darusman, the UN Special Rapporteur on the North, called for the establishment of a system that ensures those responsible for crimes against human rights are held accountable. That could include possible referral to the International Criminal Court. Contributors from other countries, including the US, Japan, and China, all said it was vital the situation in the North be solved immediately. The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights expressed concern, but said the inter-Korean agreement reached last month had raised hopes for progress on some matters, particularly reunions for war-separated families. North Korean officials refused to take part in the discussion. In a separate news conference, they said the meeting had ill-minded political objectives and was the product of a US-led conspiracy. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
The foreign ministers of South Korea, the U.S. and Japan are set to meet next week in New York on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly, topping their agenda, countering threats from North Korea. Our Kwon Jang-ho has more.
South Korea's Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se is gearing up to hold talks with his US and Japanese counterparts, John Kerry and Fumio Kishida, next Tuesday in New York. The Foreign Ministry in Seoul says the three officials will discuss cooperation on dealing with security threats posed by North Korea. Yoon is also expected to deliver a brief on the status of inter-Korean relations in the aftermath of the military standoff at the DMZ last month. The three ministers last met in Myanmar just over a year ago, with North Korea similarly topping the agenda. This upcoming meeting, however, comes at an especially critical time as North Korea has hinted at a possible satellite launch. Experts speculate Pyongyang could carry out another nuclear test or missile launch next month to coincide with the 70th anniversary of the founding of the ruling Workers' Party. US National Security Advisor Susan Rice reiterated Monday that the US will not accept North Korea as a nuclear state. The trilateral talks are also being seen as another chance for the US to strengthen ties with Korea and Japan amid the growing influence of China. Tokyo and Washington have scheduled separate talks following up on the military defense pact that was updated in April. Whether Seoul or Tokyo will hold their own talks is another matter. The relationship between the two nations are still tense, as the issue of Japan's stance on its wartime sexual slavery activities remain unresolved. Kwon Jang-ho, Arirang News.
South Korean Vice Defense Minister Baek Sung-ju and his New Zealand counterpart Helen Quilter agreed on Tuesday to boost defense cooperation. The two discussed an array of issues, including military exercise cooperation between the two countries and more exchanges between senior military officials. Baek also thanked the New Zealand government for contributing to peace building on the Korean peninsula during and after the Korean War. Quilter will be in Korea until Thursday to observe a joint maritime exercise.
The Korean Air Force's main fighter jets will get an upgrade on their long-range strike capabilities next year. According to the Air Force headquarters during Tuesday's parliamentary audit session, it plans to fit its fleet of KF-16s with an Israeli-made precision-guided munition called the Spice 2000. The device can guide a missile up to 50 kilometers after it is launched into enemy territory. An Air Force official said the system will improve the jet's survivability and increase its long-range strike capability. Korea signed a deal for the system last November and is scheduled to import it in for the first half of next year.
The Asian Development Bank has slashed this year's growth forecast for Korea to 2.7%, down 0.3 percentage points from its previous projection in July. The ADB attributed the cut to slowing exports, rising household debt, and sluggish spending, further hit by the MERS outbreak. The financial institution cut its growth forecast for all emerging Asian economies, including Korea, China, India, and Singapore, to a 14-year low. The group is predicted to grow by 5.8% this year and 6% next year, also 0.3 percentage points lower than previous figures. The region has been affected by the slowdown in China, as well as the uncertainty surrounding a possible rate hike from the U.S. Federal Reserve. News about Korea's slowing exports is not anything new, but the situation may be worse than expected. Local economic institutes are predicting the export decline rate will hit levels not seen since the global financial crisis. Kim Min-ji reports.
Korea is expecting its worst report card for exports since the 2008 global financial crisis. Local research institutes are predicting Korea's outbound shipments will plunge between 4% and 6% this year compared to a year ago. If their predictions come true, it would mark Korea's worst performance since the aftermath of the global financial crisis, when exports tumbled 14% from the year before. Korea's exports have already been on a downward trend this year, and the figures are expected to slide even more down the road. In August, outbound shipments fell nearly 15% from the year before, the biggest rate of decline in 6 years. Things aren't expected to get any better in September, as the export figure for the first 20 days of the month is already down more than 6% from the previous year. The weak performance is attributed to slow growth in the overall global economy, especially the slowdown in China, Korea's main trading partner. Barclays predicts Beijing will only grow 6% next year, down from 6.6% this year, while others are also revising down their outlooks to the 5% range.
Korea's exports to China haven't been doing so well, as there's less demand for imported goods. Things aren't going to get better in the second half, because there won't be a big enough turnaround in the global economy to boost exports.
Analysts say Korean exporters are still feeling the blow from China's currency devaluation last month, and the nation's petrochemical industries are still suffering from the effect of low global oil prices. They say although there is no immediate remedy for the problem, the government needs to do more to minimize the effects for local exporters. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
But Korea's Finance Minister Cheong has called for economic players to have confidence in the country's economy. The minister's remarks were made in reference to a recent decision by global credit ratings agency Standard & Poor's to raise Korea's ratings to AA-, noting that the agency lowered ratings for Japan and France. Choi said the move shows Korea has set itself apart from other countries. With the national Chuseok holiday just around the corner, the minister called it an opportunity to prop up the country's growth, adding that Korea will hold a local version of Black Friday sales next month to encourage spending.
Let's shift gears now. With Chuseok, a major Korean holiday just around the corner, Koreans are bracing for the traffic jam they're almost sure to encounter as they make the requisite journey back to their hometowns. Lee Ji-won provides us with some information that will come in handy if you're part of that mass exodus.
The Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport is predicting that roughly 30 million people will travel around the country this year, resulting in 2 more hours of slow traffic than last year. That means it'll take about 7.5 hours to get from Seoul to Busan, usually a 4-hour drive. For those planning to travel by car, the longest travel times for getting out of Seoul will be on the morning of Saturday the 26th. The longest travel times for those heading back into the city will be the next day on Chuseok afternoon, with nearly 7.6 million people expected to be on the road. For those staying in Seoul, public transportation services will be expanded. City bus and subway services will operate on extended hours until 2 a.m. on Sunday and Monday. That's 2 hours later than normal. More taxis and late-night buses will also be running during this period, and express and inner-city buses will run more frequently as well. Lee Ji-won, Arirang News.
Hanbok, or Korean traditional clothing, is now regarded as something that belongs in the world of high fashion, thanks in no small parts to designer Hwang. Our Kim Ji-yeon got a chance to sit down for a one-on-one with the woman regarded as a pioneer of modern Hanbok.
It'd be difficult not to be captivated by the color and lines of the full high skirt or the long sleeve top called chogori, which make up the traditional Korean dress or hanbok. They're part of a collection by famed hanbok designer Hwang that goes on display this Wednesday at the Dongdaemun Design Plaza in Seoul. Hwang is known as a pioneer of modern hanbok design, incorporating an off-the-rack concept rather than the usual custom-fit process. Her innovations to Korea's traditional dress have brought her fame. And it's because of her beautiful designs that she's been named one of the world's top 60 artists in the Google Artist campaign since 2008. But her rise to fame wasn't without hurdles. When Yi first presented her collection overseas in Paris in 1993, many mistakenly referred to her dresses as Japanese kimonos. The shock of this prompted Lee to take on the role of an ambassador of sorts when it came to introducing the hanbok to the international stage of high fashion.
I had this calling that I should let the world see for itself the beauty of hanboks, of Korean tradition, and it paid off. Even in the eyes of Westerners, the hanbok was so beautiful. They were captivated by the movement of the rippling skirt, its colorful hues, and the embroidery.
Her designs gained widespread attention in 2010 after they graced the runway of a haute couture in Paris, drawing top fashion names like Dior, Armani, and Prada. Yi, who touts a 40-year-long career, says her goal now is to present her collections during the haute couture week every year.
I have so many ideas because the development of the hanbok is endless. I want to tell my successors that our traditional culture opens us up to so many possibilities and inspirations.
Traditional patchworks and embroidery, pointed out as items that continuously inspire Yi, are also at display at the exhibition, which runs until October 9th. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
For international news headlines, we turn to Bruce Harrison at the News Center.
Our focus today, the White House prepares to welcome China's president. Volkswagen says it will make up for cheating emission standards, and Pakistan spares a paralyzed prisoner on death row.
Bruce, let's start with Chinese President Xi Jinping's first state visit to the U.S. What major issues are going to be discussed while he's there?
Many Americans are concerned about cybersecurity, especially in the context of doing business today and in China. President Xi's first U.S. stop is Seattle, where he's expected to meet leaders of American tech companies. But it's unclear whether a deal on cybersecurity will be reached when Xi arrives in Washington later this week.
What we're most focused on is trade secrets and the ability of businesses to operate without the fear that they're going to be subjected to cyber attacks that steal their intellectual property.
According to the New York Times, President Xi is expected to yield very little on cybersecurity and other points of contention during talks in the U.S. Capitol. Other testy topics include China's island building in the South China Sea and tighter controls on foreign businesses and non-governmental organizations. The warmest moments of his visit may be a 21-gun salute as he's welcomed on the White House lawn, followed by a state dinner. Volkswagen says it made a big mistake. After the automaker admitted to rigging emissions tests of diesel vehicles in the U.S., the head of Volkswagen in America took to the stage in New York City.
So let's be clear about this. Our company was dishonest with the EPA and the California Air Resources Board and with all of you. And in my German words, we have totally screwed up.
Horn said he's confident VW can regain customer trust, but the scope of the damage expanded greatly Tuesday. According to the New York Times, Volkswagen announced 11 million of its diesel cars worldwide were equipped with the same software used to cheat emissions tests in the U.S. Volkswagen could face a penalty of up to $18 billion for misleading U.S. regulators, as well as class action lawsuits from once loyal customers. South Korea has also announced it will conduct its own investigation into 4,000 to 5,000 Volkswagens built since 2014. A death row inmate in Pakistan has avoided the hangman's noose for now because he's unable to walk. Authorities at the jail postponed the execution just an hour before the hanging, as prison rules are unclear how to proceed given the man is paralyzed from the waist down. The Supreme Court upheld Abdul Basit's death sentence Monday, but only if it could be carried out in line with jail rules. His lawyer said he became paralyzed in prison after contracting meningitis and was not properly treated. Pakistan brought back the death penalty last year to deal with militancy after Taliban gunmen slaughtered more than 130 students at a school. Basit is convicted of murder, though he denies the charges. This is the latest case highlighting the dysfunctional justice system in Pakistan, which has hanged 239 people since December. And that's it for World News Tonight. I'm Bruce Harrison.
It was a scorcher today here in Seoul. In fact, it's been the hottest September in 50 years. The daily high peaked at 31, and Daejeon was the warmest with a high of 31.3 this afternoon. But things are about to cool down a bit with rain in the forecast for the southern provinces. Jeju will get the most rainfall of up to 80 millimeters, and the southern coastal regions will see somewhere between 10 to 15 millimeters, but upper parts of the country will stay dry under partly sunny skies, but the rain and clouds will lower temperatures by 4 to 6 degrees compared to today. So let's take a closer look. The daily low here in Seoul will start off at 18 and will rise to 27, while Daegu, Gwangju, and Busan will all get up to 24 tomorrow afternoon. And as for the other regions, Daejeon and Jeju Island will see a high of 25 and 24, while Dokdo rises to 23. Rain could continue into Friday for Jeju and other southern areas, while here in Seoul, conditions will mostly remain sunny, so clear conditions are forecast. We should be able to see a full bright moon during the upcoming Chuseok holiday. But that's all for the weather. Good night.
And that brings us to the end of our newscast. Thank you for staying with us.
Do join us for more same time tomorrow. Goodbye for now.